I founded in 2015. I work with artists all around the world to really help get their stories out there. And so, yeah, I'm excited to get an artist. Oh, hello, loud noise. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I talking loud enough? Yeah, in an artist talk context, I feel like, what you and I do on a daily basis, which we'll get to, Matthew, is really uncover artist stories about their work, their practice. And so I'm excited to do that today with you, Preston. We've obviously worked on a lot of projects and love what you have here today in this group show. It's beautiful. So yeah, it's just a little bit about me and we'll get into it. You want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Preston Douglas Boyer. I'm an artist. I have 4 works in this exhibition, sometimes wind blows, focusing on textile art, if you haven't been able to tell already. This work behind me, one of my latest, actually the biggest wedding dress painting I've ever made. And then there's this wedding dress sculpture to our left. It's also a functional object, also functions as a light. And then I have 2 works in the back of the gallery, these red and silver pieces. The sculptural piece is called You're Worthy of It All. And then the work behind that is one of my zipper paintings entitled Blessing by Blood. So that's a little bit about me, and Matthew, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Matthew Dunnerstick. I have a marketing agency called Heroic, and we work a lot with museums, artists, entertainment, just a lot of the marketing with that. Also like kind of a creative partner to help artists with their ideas from beginning to end. And also I have a digital art studio called Arsenal. We're like a spin-off of Artist Rights Society, which does a lot of licensing, and so we do like blue chip kind of digital art productions.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to be here with Aubrie. She and I have been working together a bunch, and I've met Preston last year with some of the interreality stuff, so happy to be here.
Yeah, we did a miniature version of our performance called Repurpose Religion, which actually debuted in October of 2023, I think, here at the Brewery Lofts in a really cool space. And that was one of the big reasons my now wife and I moved to Los Angeles, is to pursue this performance piece. Aubrie and I met through her show Into Reality, and we ended up doing a small version of that performance of Repurpose Religion for their big Freeze event earlier this year. I can't believe that was, 9 months ago?
I know, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh, time flies. 10 months ago, actually.
Yeah, it was really well attended. It was awesome. You guys did such a great job. The performances were beautiful.
Thank you.
The music was great too. Awesome. Look, do you want to start by maybe telling us a little bit about, the works that are in the show? That obviously the painting on the wall. You have this sculpture that's incorporating fabric, and tell me more about those materials actually.
Yeah.
And then of course the wedding dress pieces. So how do they connect? And yeah, just kind of open it up to that.
Yeah, I started fashion about 10 years ago, so my whole practice is exactly, one of the thesis of this show. Like, how do we make painting in particular in different ways, different mark-making gestures, different materiality that may not be acrylic or oil and a brush and paint and canvas and linen. And one of the realizations I had when I was living in New York is canvas and linen, at the end of the day, are fabric. Why am I relegating myself to these 2 traditional fabrics when I have a whole understanding and history and knowledge and working relationship with all these other fabrics I've been using in my fashion career for 6 years up until that point, right? So that was kind of one of the boundary pushing aha moments I had. And then the other was fashion was such a dirty word when I entered the art world. It was a faux pas, people looked down on you for being from fashion. I got invited to meet with Vogue a number of years ago when I was just working in fashion. I brought them my 3rd collection I ever made to the One World Trade Center. I had a meeting with someone very big there, and she said, "Preston, you're an artist, you're not a fashion designer." And I remember walking out of there being so sad and offended. And then years later, I'm she was completely right. My fashion projects were always art projects. And so you see the wedding dress works, you see the fabric hanging off the sculpture, all of this is an extension of that materiality. And there's so much emotional resonance to these Duchampian, ready-made, everyday materials such as the wedding dress. We see Joel Alderson's sculpture To my left here, incorporating some lace and wedding dress textiles, and these everyday, or not so everyday, objects of beauty have so much resonance with us in society and modern day culture. With the red work, the zipper paintings, I've really been trying to make these worlds from scratch in many ways, unto themselves. I use all these corporate logos and all of these, contemporary societal objects and images to create these works that I distort in a scanner, and they go from physical to digital to physical to digital and back and forth. But the wedding dress works have really struck a chord with people, and allowing myself to actually use these ready-made cultural objects that I'm sourcing vintage wedding dresses on eBay, rather than feeling like I have to create the world from scratch. And it's been a real push and pull, to be quite honest, in allowing myself to be in acceptance of that, and kind of live in that liminal, weird space where I'm like, I don't want to sell out, but the work resonates with people in a different, deeper way. So, yeah.
Who's giving up their most prized moment in life
Yeah.
over to your hands? Like, who does that? And how do you get these?
Yes, who does that?
Uh-huh.
How did it get started?
So, how it got started is my wife and I got married legally in Houston, Texas in July, where we're both from. The first night I was there, I had a dream that I was making these sculptural pieces out of these aluminum kind of metal wavy forms. And when I got back to LA, I began working on that sculpture. The second night I was in Houston on that trip, I had a dream I was making paintings out of wedding dresses. I rarely have dreams that are as sentient as that. And I woke up from both of them being like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, and having some resistance to it, right? Because I don't usually get that. We had our LA wedding here in August, and we made Jacqueline's wedding dress. And so there was kind of a full circle moment of coming from fashion, and now this is a very important part of my life. As far as the sourcing of the dresses, I just started looking on eBay. Like, I love sneakers, like I come from sourcing stuff on eBay, and I just set my price range to a certain level because they get kind of cray-cray, and just started messaging sellers and having all these strange conversations with people around the world. And I kept getting dresses actually from this place in Houston. And it turns out like the primary wedding dress boxer, so some people like have the dress boxed, is actually based in Houston. And I'm like, okay, there's another sign that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And the last point on this topic is, it's always been my intention to make commissioned wedding dress works. We can kind of get into the emotional connotations of the wedding dress and what this means to make an artwork out of it and to cut it up in a second, but on a more structural, physical level, I have my first commissioned client, and she had this custom Dior Couture wedding dress made for her 9 years ago. And it has her now ex's face on it, her face, and their child's face on it. And this is a $20,000 custom Dior dress, right? And she in her life has come to terms with it and doesn't, of course, want to throw it away, but they never ended up getting married, and she never used the dress. So she's worn it a couple times to events and stuff. But for her, it's like a reclamation of that past, and it's the 10-year anniversary of this wedding that didn't happen, with this object of intense desire and beauty that is just sitting in her closet.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's at the point in her life where she's like, okay, I'm willing to allow you to make the first one of this. And so here in a couple weeks, when I'm back in Houston, I'm going to be cutting up this $20,000 Dior Couture custom wedding dress that cannot be replicated, and making a sculptural art object that I call wedding dress paintings out of it. So, yeah.
That's incredible. I would imagine a little nerve-wracking
Definitely.
too, that process with, it being a Dior, and, in the process of doing more and more of these dresses, you're actually dealing with other designers' creations. How does that feel like? And I love also too that you call them paintings. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, none of these paintings that I have in the show, and a lot of the paintings, or at least I'm calling them paintings right now, I don't know what the individual artists would identify the works as, but they are in the context of this rectilinear plane, and in the context of painting art history. To me, paintings are kind of this world that we enter, that we experience, that we're a part of, that tell a story, that become part of our story, these objects of beauty that we place in our home that have energy, that have spiritual energy to them. And so I call them paintings because I think about that, and it's easier to say that than come up with my own word for whatever they might be. And having that conversation in between sculpture and painting is obviously the theme of this show, and it's a conversation that I'm interested in having with collectors and other artists, etc. So I call them paintings, but the wedding dress, I call them the wedding dress works because they, as you see, kind of
Got it. Okay.
really kind of toe the line between sculpture and painting.
Do you always put them up on metal like this, or are they on canvas sometimes, or doesn't it depends?
Yeah, I've been using these custom aluminum stretchers that I kind of have custom made into crosses and dealing with like this religious iconography, which is, you know, a part of the spiritual journey in my life that is a real push and pull, and kind of putting them up on these metal armatures and thinking about the stretcher bar as body, and coming from fashion thinking about, you know, our limbs, right, and draping fabric over the models, and doing that in the context of painting through these custom-made aluminum stretcher bars. So that's what they've been on recently. We'll see how they kind of evolve or devolve.
Should we open it up to questions to the audience? You want to talk more about?
Does anyone have any particular questions at the moment?
Just the history of the Dior dress is obviously, that's, I mean, I don't know, like, give you any more anxiety than you have, but do you have any thoughts about how you're gonna handle the imagery that's over, because, you know, wedding dresses are already pretty, like, abstract and structural, and you can kind of rearrange that, but this has this, like, print on it, what you're thinking about doing with that, how that applies to this more, kind of, constructed abstract process for this one?
Totally. Yes, I've been thinking about that, and how I work. The process is really the journey, right? So I can't really pre-plan one of these. What happens is I make a decision. I usually make a large incision, cut the dress in half, and there's no going back from there. And it was honestly quite a challenging position to be in, where I was cutting up these people who I don't know's wedding dresses, but there's a reason why they're selling it on eBay to begin with. Like, coming to terms with like this violent act is actually part of the healing process, maybe, and that incision, that separation, that action that can never be reverted. Of course, higher stakes in this regard, but it's not, I won't do this for any client. Like, I know she trusts me. And that's a really important part of these relationships. And any of the custom works I do, I'm very particular about who I make custom works for, because it's really a collaboration at the end of the day. So how the specific embroidery aspects will get imbued into the work, we'll see. But there's also all this beautiful hand-done embroidery and beading in the dress that is probably going to be difficult to cut through. And it's probably going to be some sort of metaphor for the relationship and all the energy that went into the dress kind of being undone. So we shall see.
Excited to see the finished product.
Me too. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, when I heard you doing this, I was just like, this is the most genius thing. You're taking someone's most prized thing, one of their most prized things, that's in a box, and then you're giving it a new life. And you know, I just can imagine the list of people wanting to commission you. That your niche now is, one of your niches will be this person that does it. Like, you did say it's a collaboration. Are they requesting it in a certain way? Like, how much back and forth is there, or is it just like, take it? This is my baby. Like.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think more will be revealed in that regards. And in my mind, there'll probably be some sort of contract that comes out of this, depending on the relationship, depending on the intensity of the client and the project. How well do we actually know each other? How much do I trust you? How much do you trust me? And I think everyone will be quite unique. So I've been making custom zipper paintings for people over the past year and a half or so. I became a certified addiction recovery coach in New York as an additional income source, and that totally changed the way I saw how art functions, not only in people's lives, but the whole process of art, and how it can really be a starting point for meaningful change in people's lives, and a starting point for these conversations that kind of happen on varying levels, like how deep do you really want to go? Are you willing to go? Where are you at in life? And for this to be another way of enacting transformation in someone's life. And so these wedding dress works in particular can be these objects to commemorate someone's happy, loving marriage. They can also be a way to come to terms and reclaim one's past or a past relationship that you can't let go of. Like, my mom was holding on to her wedding dress forever. And now it's in my storage unit in Houston. I've had that wedding dress in my storage unit for 2 years. Very challenging relationship, let's say.
Do you burn them or paint them or color them? Anything?
I'm sure all of those will come into play.
Yeah.
100%.
This is where it comes up.
100%. And it's through the conversation that I'm having with these clients that different things come up.
Yeah.
But like we think about canvas, like they're kind of a blank slate. Like they're usually some form of white, off-white. How these different acrylics and different paints and ways of applying gesture to them come about, like, is really just like painting. It's a whole new world. Yeah.
Yeah, it really makes you reflect on how symbolic the wedding dress is, right?
Yes.
To our personal lives and experiences. Yeah, in that process, because everyone's coming to you with a different situation. I know Matthew sort of asked this, but are you exploring with that? Are you getting from them sort of what you feel the piece should become, it should turn into, or is it a team effort, or do you feel like you're really coming away with that? It's emotional free. I don't know how to ask that question exactly, but
Yeah, I think it's like
sense.
any relationship. Like, how much is this person like bringing to the table,
Yeah.
and that then leads to the collaboration. I think of any commission, custom work that I'm making for people as inherently a collaboration. A group show, inherently a collaboration. You work with a gallery, that's a collaboration. Coming from fashion, I collaborated with so many people all the time. To make one dress, right, it took 40 people. You got the fabric producers, you have the embroidery people, you have the tailors, the pattern cut, all this, right? And so painting was such a beautiful thing because I could just do it by myself in my studio. And now coming back to that, coming from fashion, like, yes, sure, like I am very much an artist. I have a vision for what something's gonna be, but there's a level of like push and pull and letting go that happens in these collaborations that actually ends up being way better usually than I can just do myself, right? And so I learn just as much from these custom works as I hope the actual client gains out of the object they end up with.
Any more comments? Yeah.
Sure. You mentioned the role of sort of religious iconography in your work, and I was wondering if you could just speak to that aspect of spirituality or sort of religiosity in your work, sort of in the larger sense.
Totally. Yeah, I see all of these physical objects I'm making as manifestations of the spiritual journey. And through becoming a recovery coach, I had that realization, like, why am I making art? I'm not making art just because I like it, just because I want to make money, just because I want to have fame and my ego strokes and all these things. I'm making art because for me in my personal life, it's a way of dealing with these lessons that I'm here on earth to be dealing with. And so when I'm making a wedding dress work in my studio by myself with wedding dresses I've purchased, sure, it's kind of a collaboration with these people whose dresses it was, but it's really more about my tension and in my relationship, or the tension that I'm having to deal with as a man and becoming something new in a new chapter. And like, that's all spiritual lessons in my life. They're represented by physical manifestations of these wedding dresses that end up becoming objects of beauty. And we think of the wedding, I mean, it's inherently tied to some sort of religious connection, and there's a lot there to further explore, for sure. Yeah. Thank you. And Aubrie just had a beautiful wedding in Italy, and I keep joking with her. I'm like, when is the Aubrie wedding dress gonna happen?
This is something I never would have thought of. This is amazing what you're doing, and we need to talk.
Wedding tux?
You know what? We joked about like the Rick Owens becoming. Matthew was like, "So when are you gonna cut up the pants?" And I can see the tucks happening. But for many years, I've taken personal clothing or clothing from friends who have an intimate relationship with, and cut them up and sewed them together, and sometimes painted on them and stretched them over a stretcher bar, and they're a painting. I've made works that have like used dominatrix gear on it. And those are really.
I was fine without the word used. I would have been there with you.
But that makes it so much more interesting to me. I'm not gonna go just buy this, right? Like there's that inherent humanity, that darkness, that light that comes into play. Matthew will be donating his later today for commissioned artwork.
Give you the box.
Amazing. But yeah, I've been doing these various like clothing, shoes, like all these things. So I could totally see. The thing that I really had to reckon with, though, to be quite honest, as an artist, is like I don't want to just be the wedding dress painter. And so many painters like end up getting pigeonholed into this thing that they do, and this is what they do, and the market likes this particular thing because it's priced this way and it sells like this in the secondary market, and this is it.
But also like milk it, because it's a great idea.
Exactly, and like allowing and like this is like such a post-Duchamp, like these are ready-mades. Right? And for me, I've been so resistant to allowing myself to use culture in such a direct way to make my work. And that has been the biggest reckoning for me as an artist in the past 6 months since I've been thinking about making these works. That I'm finally like, okay, we're going for it. And coming to terms with that, and letting go really of my attachment to what I think my work should be or could be, and all of that weird stuff that we artists have sometimes.
And with these concepts and emotions and all the symbology, all these things you want to express, I feel like textile art is such a great channel for that, which is clearly having a moment. It's so great to see all of these textile works together in a room. How do you feel that maybe that particular medium really feeds the process?
Yeah, I second that. Like, it was definitely not as much of a thing when I was making work. Getting pigeonholed into craft and these kind of like subgenres of contemporary art that are not valued as much as oil on canvas or acrylic on linen. These things, and part of my challenge has been to embrace that and accept that and push the ball forward, because that's what the next generation of artists do is they take the ball, and things that should be bad, things that are no-goes. My mentor Mark Flood said, take the things that should disqualify you from being a good artist and make art about that and through those lenses. And Mark actually sent me this video of a Chinese retailer of some sort of kind of fast fashion type of store with live models walking on these walking pads. And he was like, this would be a funny performance piece for you. And he was totally joking. And I was like, oh, that's funny. That's genius. And so that's kind of how that was born. And one serendipity, like how I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, exactly when I'm supposed to be here. We were looking on Facebook Marketplace for these walking pads, and no one was responding to our messages. And my wife is like the queen of Facebook Marketplace. She can get anything, anytime, from anywhere in LA. And we just could not source it. And not only one of my panelists has a walking pad, but both of the panelists have walking pads.
That is really weird, actually. And I never share that I have a walking pad, but I put one under my desk because I am constantly on a laptop and I can't stand sitting all day, so I actually walk and work at a standing desk. It's embarrassing, but I do. And my dog, I wasn't walking and working at this point, but my dog comes and lays on it under my desk, and I'm like, I think my dog's confused what this machine is for, so I took a picture and posted it on my story, and here we are with my treadmill. I don't know how funny this story is. I want this to be funny. Anyway. Crazy.
I recommend it. Keeps the weight down. wear your wedding dress while.
Awesome. I'll try Jacqueline's on while I'm on our new walking pad. We'll maybe acquire from Facebook Marketplace later this week. So. Awesome.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So it looks like the majority of the dresses that you have here are more vintage. Do you have more of an affinity towards vintage pieces, or are you looking to work with newer pieces as well?
Yeah, I think newer works would be more commission custom pieces. eBay has stuff all the way from like the 50s on there. And so I'll really like kind of just like set a price range, a budget, because they get crazy. And then I really just use my intuition as I'm like coming, because there's a lot on there, and there's a lot of like really crazy stuff on there also. But getting into veils and all these things, I don't necessarily have a particular affinity yet for a certain era, but I'm sure that taste will come if this trend continues. So, yeah. Thank you. What's your favorite era?
I would say more vintage pieces like the 60s or something for wedding dresses.
Yeah.
The material is very cool, but then you also have to think about, you know, as time goes on, the fabrics lose their quality, but then, you know, they tear easier or something, so it may be something that you're looking for
Yeah.
in your works.
And like, find like a lot of them like have these stains on them that kind of like read as blood stains. You're like, oh my god. But really, it's probably red wine, right?
Yeah.
From the wedding night, people getting a little drunk.
Yeah.
And so I love all those imperfections in these used pieces. And like the bottoms being super dirty. We got Jacqueline's out, you know, yesterday. It's the first time we've seen it since August, and we're like, oh my god, the bottom is so dirty. My sweet Jacqueline spent 3 hours steaming all the dresses last night, and I crumpled them up and put them in the trunk of the car. So, but I like those imperfections. And so, you know, I'm sure there'll be clients who want it perfect, and that'll be part of the work in a new way, right? Awesome. All right, I think we're at it. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm waiting on the ball, falling out.
Thank you.
Yeah.